everyone, and welcome to the All Things ITSM Global Podcast. We're coming to you from FUSION15 in New Orleans. I'm Kirsty McGowan. I'm here with Jarod Greene.
Hey, Kirsty.
Carlos Casanova.
Kirsty.
And we're speaking with Tim Short from Agri Bank. Hi, Tim. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you.
Welcome for joining us, Tim. I know this is your first. Jarod, thanks for joining us again. We've had you on before. So Tim, we're here at Fusion again. We always talk about the people, process, technology situation, and any of us that have done any work in this space, for any amount of time, all know that after the process and technology, really the core of it is the people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And trying to change how things happen and whatnot is really the biggest challenge. We all experience that. I tell folks all the time, every tool will fail, every tool will succeed, but how do you address the cultural part of that? That's the one thing that we continuously keep running into is getting the people to change how they go about their behaviors and really changing the cultural aspects of an organization. How do you deal with that?
We've really struggled with that. We put our new tool in a year and a half ago, and it has been awesome in the functionality that we're now providing. But the people, it's tough to change people, and it's tough to change process. And unfortunately, all of our departments, they have always done things the way they have done them. And it's difficult to get them to think about, so if I have a ticket and it impacts somebody else, how do I get that to them? How do I, I'm thinking transfer tickets here, I'm thinking SLAs and how long do I keep a ticket before I can transfer it and get it to where it needs to be and all of that. It's just difficult. We are working right now on putting together a retraining process so that we can go through our entire IT organization and retrain people on what we expect them to do, when we expect them to do it, and how we expect them to do it, so that we can all get on the same page here.
Right. Yeah, that's what I find is sometimes, and one of my clients right now, they almost don't have the foundations. And had I engaged at a certain time, I would have almost said, get to a certain level of foundation where everybody at least knows how to spell change. Everyone knows how to spell, RFC, incident, and get there. And then, that retraining thing sounds really interesting because you're actually saying, okay, now that everybody knows what they don't know, we can actually start. And it's hard from a budgetary perspective to really sell that, to an executive. Say, hey, we're going to do this twice by plan, and nobody wants to hear it, right? But that's, we all deny it. But that's really what it sounds like you guys are really kind of coming into is, we've done a bunch of stuff now. Let's train everyone on really how to make those gains.
Yeah, ours was not by plan.
Most of them are.
Obviously,
it just happens.
We thought when we rolled out our tool and the new process and everything that everybody would just say, this is the most wonderful thing since sliced bread. But guess what?
It's a pretty common mistake.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not. So
it's amazing that and a lot of us that have been around different companies for years, it's the same thing. It's not unique, and as many times as you have either internal folks or outside folks make those comments about start small, just do the little thing, don't worry about trying, we've all been there, we all get caught up in it, we want to do the big thing, and even when it's not scheduled and it's not planned, like, oh well, this is just a little bit more, and this is just next thing you know, your scope creep is we're doing a whole organization, and all the processes.
So Jarod, you must have seen it in a lot of different organizations.
Absolutely.
So what do you think really works?
Yeah, I think a lot of the challenges you have with that type of change is really it's driven from fear. Right, you're asking people to do things that are new, that are different, and a lot of times you're not necessarily changing the job description or changing the pay scale. So there's that, kind of what's in it for me perspective. You want everybody to kind of sing from the same hymnal, read from the same playbook, but the reality is you're dealing with individuals with different sets of motivations at different times that go through things like in life, and so it's a challenge. And I don't think there's a magic wand. I don't think there's one set of guiding principles you can provide. But when you look at what Tim's done and sort of the retraining effort, it works to at least get people literally back on the same page, speaking some of the same language. So, my time at Gartner was spent working with different organizations and kind of understanding those subtle nuances. But I think the value of having frameworks and best practices is that you can take them and you can tweak them in accordance with some of those subtle nuances.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you point that out, because that's one thing that I do find that, it is somewhat a fear type thing. And sometimes I find that the organizations are almost incenting the very behavior they're trying to break. Right? So, organizations that are very hierarchical in nature, and you can only retain your title, whatever that title is, because you had 17 people working for you. And now we're going to change it, and we're going to put this other, I'm at 15 people now. Do I lose my title? So that if that's not discussed early on. So are you running into some of that as challenges, or is it the traditional everything under the sun kind of?
For us, it's not so much the title and all of that. It is, we run a very lean shop. We have less than 50 people in our IT organization, from operations to business analysts to the development team to the network people. And so we don't have a very big shop, and we've got a lot going on. And they, a lot of times, as they're working through an issue or a problem, it's done. And that is okay.
Because I finished it.
Well, I am incented to get a lot of stuff done, but I am not incented to actually describe what I did and how
to help the next person.
Exactly.
Right. And I think it goes into that sort of protection element of it, right? So when you start to deal with change, it is, I will get the work done. I will be the hero. And it's not malicious, right? Because everybody's driving towards the same goal. But when you think about sort of the broader impact, how we touch the broader team, what the larger goal is, sometimes it's hard to keep focus on that.
And that's the thing that I think sometimes people think that, and it's interesting you said that term, malicious. I don't find that the vast majority of people are doing things intentionally to harm. It's just, I don't have time. I don't have time to go do the documentation. Kirsty, I'd love to help you, but you know what? I got 17 others that, if I could, I know I can just get this done. But it's and that's where I think, leadership or lack thereof really plays the role to say, hey, you know what? We know we're going to need to take it a little bit slower, but if you document it, then Kirsty and Jarod and myself, when we go to do this same exact thing next week,
so you're not going to have to do it next week.
Exactly.
We're not. First of all, you're not. Pinned. Oh, by the way, Tim, we can't promote you. Well, why? Because you're the only one that can do this thing. So I think that comes back to the leadership and management, aspect of not structuring it and not giving people the level of comfort that.
What I love too for that cultural change, I don't know if you've seen Karen Ferris's work on balanced diversity framework. That's well worth taking a look at when you're looking at cultural change. It was based on a whole lot of research, but it gives a really good framework for getting people to change. Looking at the informal and formal practices you can do. It's well worth a glance.
I know one thing that that I've done over the years is, and someone introduced it to me probably like 10 years ago, was basically a checklist, bringing folks on, and I think it was like maybe 15 items, and they had to prioritize it. And what's more important to you, to really understand the person at a personal level, and it changes. If you're just newly married and going into the kids thing, maybe the career ladder is going to have to go a little slower. 5 years earlier, 10 years later, it changes. So understanding personally, but what the difficulty there is from a management perspective and a leadership perspective, you have a very hard conversation with people and say, hey, Jarod, you're not going to get promoted. If you want, your weekends off, you want your nights off, you want, your 40 hours, 9 to 5 kind of thing. We're not firing you, we're not laying you off, but you got to understand, Tim is really killing himself. He's here on weekends and nights. Raises, they're probably going to go his way. Promotions, they're probably going to go his way. And as long as everyone's comfortable with that, that's fine.
Right.
But I don't think that most managers are having those conversations with people, because they're hard conversations.
It is. It can be. And I think a lot of times it's that assumption that everybody's goal is to just kind of work and slave and grind. And you have people who want work-life balance. And you have to learn as a manager that's okay, right? But like to your point, to be transparent, to be open, to understand those trade-offs so that employees can make the best decisions, that's key. And I think you're right. I think managers do struggle with having that conversation.
But they won't even have it at the year reviews, right? So you're trying to change culture, right? So think about it. You were talking about the challenge of that. What happens at the year-end review? Now you're going to have a hard conversation and say, hey, by the way, I didn't have the harder one then, and now we're going to have it. So do you guys work on that? I know you're doing a lot of retraining. from a management perspective, are you guys also looking at, basically educating the managers how to deal with individuals that are going to be struggling mentally, physically through that?
That is something we need to look at. We've not addressed that yet,
Right.
but definitely the getting out of the manufacturing mentality, I need 15 widgets done today, as opposed to the quality of the experience for the customer.
Right.
That's really where we need to drive it to, and management and what they are focused on really has an impact on that.
Right. So Tim, thanks. That's really cool that you guys are looking at sort of the management side of things. I would think there's a lot of sort of knowledge management kind of component in that. And Jarod, you've done a lot of work in that space. How would you envision, to help change some of that culture, with the knowledge management, the documentation? How would you envision, some of that tying into that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the components around documentation, it sounds like extra work, right?
Yeah.
So the component of I will do the job and I'll log the information, and then I have to relog it for someone else's purposes. That can be fairly labor intensive, and when you have to describe the value up to someone, sometimes it's lost. So ultimately we see the future knowledge management from our perspective of going out of documentation, right? So we'll work with some of our partners who will actually record the session, right, and get a sense of here's the work that's been done. If I make that available to someone else, I don't have to spend the time to document, nor do I have to spend the time on the knowledge transfer for them to get value from it. So that's one component. We've also started to see customers work with capturing video. So using tools like Capterra or just get general kind of screen capture tools where I can do the work or I can explain it to someone else and they can get value from it. You've certainly seen, how we use YouTube in our personal lives. I always use the analogy, I couldn't tie a tie, I couldn't tie a half Windsor, but I can go to YouTube and I can watch someone do it and figure it out. So it's that kind of enablement of saying you can get out of static documents, and it's not just a Cherwell specific function, but getting out of static documents to let people share and collaborate, I think is sort of the future knowledge management.
Yeah, and I've got a customer at home who's planning to go to Cherwell next year, and so I did some looking at the knowledge management sort of things, and I have to say I was pretty impressed. It's what they need, and I'm sure it's what a lot of people out there need.
And I'll ask Tim, have you taken steps? Tim's a happy Cherwell customer. Have you taken steps with the knowledge management piece of our product?
That's the number one project on my list as soon as I get back. We're moving towards KCS, and so we've got to make some changes, obviously, in our training and our culture, so that we can capture the goodness of the resolution on a ticket and be able to reuse that. So there's a few tweaks we have to make to the tool so that we can capture that easier. But that's exactly where we're going.
That's great.
And I would think, that's the biggest thing, right, is when people start seeing, I invested X amount in documenting this, and here's the savings that has come 5 times over. Once people see it, I think they start to get there. But in the interim, you were saying, before, I've got 17 things I need to get done. I need to go down the checklist. Yep, done. And it's tough, to step back and sometimes say, I'm not going to do 17, I'm going to do 15. But the 15 that I do are going to be documented, and they're going to help 17 people after that. It's tough.
Yeah, unless you use knowledge management, you have to run on heroes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only way.
You've had a few conversations on heroes.
That's the only way that an organisation can work if they don't use knowledge management, is by having individual heroes.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and it's also getting out of the instant gratification mode and getting into, okay, I'm doing this because it's going to benefit me tomorrow.
Yeah, right. And you're going to benefit the whole organisation rather than just your own ego, basically.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think analytics and automation play a role as well. So when you think about the way to take some of your heroes and sort of automate the best practices that they take, and so Cherwell has these one-step capabilities that allow you to do that scale some of your heroes. But at the same time, from an analytics perspective, I like the ability to tie in the value from the knowledge article or the knowledge asset that was created. So, you talked about the future of it. I think there's a world where if I write a knowledge-based article and someone else uses it and they rate it or they get value from it or they solve an issue, I want to provide some value back to the creator of that document, right? So there's that element of gamification where I've created the article, and then maybe 3 weeks later, I get the thumbs up, I get the kudo, I get the star, I get the points.
That's right.
So it's not as instant, but you can see how that value is connected back to other people.
Well, you feel that I didn't write this for no reason.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's really why I think most of us, really kind of, say, I wrote this thing. I don't know if anybody's ever read it.
Yeah.
And then what's the value move? I wrote
I'm not gonna do
400
it
of
again.
these. I'm not doing it. No one likes it. No one cares. But if someone uses it and gets value and can communicate that happened and validate it, it's all worth it.
Exactly.
Well, thanks a lot for your time today, Tim. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. And,
Thank you very much.
Good luck for the rest of the year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jarod.
Thank you.